possibilism. The breakdown of my research question I think is super important considering there's a lot of vocabulary in it. So overall the question is questioning how are social bonds implicated by infrastructure and influenced decreasing the quality overall. So to what extent are cultural bonds being decreased in quality due to the influence of infrastructure? I came to this research question primarily by the writing of Richard Blanco, who is who is a Cuban immigrant. He and his family moved to America when he was very young, and throughout the writing, looking for the Gulf Motel, he really explains that though that they were very poor, they were able to enjoy such a vacation by doing things such as cooking their own meals and bringing their own flour to do so. Throughout the writing, he really discusses that he and his family have this element of tangible memories with it that are held at this Gulf Motel. However, though today, these memories are completely diminished tangibly. As shown here in 1975, the coast of Miami is much wider than it was due to environmental factors, but also the high-rises and larger buildings and strips have been built up substantially. So this accounts for a much larger population, which seems great and that much higher quality things, but as you can imagine, these smaller motels really did not make the cut. So elements of multiple tangible memories are completely gone. Richard Blanco explains that he would like to find the Gulf Motel exactly as it was and pretend for a moment that nothing lost is lost. This refers to the cultural bond that he has to the setting and the social bond that he has with his family of relying around this memory, which is super important when considering such an influential element of his childhood and development. However, this does impact more than just a simple motel on the beach, but also communities have been recently overwhelmed with large chain retailers. This may seem great at first as they offer a larger variety for a cheaper price, but in the long run, mom and pop shops were really where it was at for cultural bonds between communities. It's very different going to a large retailer such as Walmart and getting just your order versus going to a small independent business that you've been going with your parents since you were little. As explained by Mark Tran, who is a journalist, independent businesses are often the canaries in a gold mine of gentrification. This basically means that independent businesses really give out the final warning before gentrification has completely taken over. When small businesses start to close their doors and lock up completely because they don't have the competition to react, it really sets off alarms for those in the community and those being gentrified. This does affect more than just lower prices and the social bonds of communities, but also a phenomenon called the rent gap. So basically what the population can afford is a baseline, and then what the housing market is calling for is substantially higher. This leaves a lot of dead space in the middle that is considered to be the rent gap. So the original community really cannot afford to pay for these prices, and that pushes a lot of them out in the process of gentrification. However, many must wonder, is it for the greater good? As explained by Issues and Controversies, a database and peer-reviewed source, is that virtually no country has graduated to a high-income status without urbanizing. This means that, without these efforts towards more infrastructure, so better farming techniques, bigger high-rises, better even highways and roads, that the country cannot grow beyond. That's really important when you consider that those that were already a minority in the community, such as those relying on subsidized housing, such as government aid and things like Section 8, that they're being pushed to more and more of a minority in the community. So being able to fight for their spots and for their right inside their original community is super important for them to still flourish the way that they had in the years before developers came to the community and saw the so-said potential and wanted to change everything. Martin Luther King explains that there is a time when the cup of endurance runs over and men are no longer willing to be plunged into the abyss of despair. I apply this meaning to the concept of those that were already a minority in the community. So those that already had to fight to have their teeth and nail to have a part into the space. So that is super important when you consider that they're being pushed out more and more as time goes on. So not only are the social distances growing drastically, but also physical distances between people's workplace and their homes. So between, moving further and further out of the suburbs or moving further into them, when you work in the city center, you're in the car with transit much longer than you would be originally. Herbert J. Gaines, who is an environmental expert, claims that distances required transit between home and work increase emissions, which obviously makes sense. However, these do still have detrimental impacts to the community. So overall, social bonds, economic cycles, and environmental shifts all have a really poor impact, and they end up fracturing communities through processes like gentrification, so pushing out the original majority to become the minority until eventually they can no longer withstand. So once again, to what extent is culture degraded by progressive positivism? And here's my work cited.
Okay, a couple of questions for you. First one is, what evidence did you gather that you didn't use, and why did you choose not to use it?
Can you please repeat the question, please?
Yeah, what evidence did you gather that you didn't use, and then why did you choose not to use it?
I had a lot of trouble finding primary sources that I thought were either reliable enough or relevant enough to this. Many of the primary sources that I found off of databases such as Issues and Controversies, it was extremely one-sided, as expected, but I had a lot of trouble shifting it to fit my lenses presented in my overall presentation.
Okay. And then your second question is, if you had more time, what additional research would you conduct related to this issue?
I know that I would really like to get out into our personal community, as I know certain parts of our city, such as OTR over the Rhine, are really experiencing this mass wave of gentrification and just urbanizing in not a more ideal way.
Okay, thank you.